Let's get started and we'll deal with it. Learning sponsors. Year of Learning Suane Arnie Garlic. In memory of Malka Perlman and Philip Mann. And Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch and Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch. Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch and Yerivka Perel Rosner bas Arav Tzvi Hirsch. And in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust. Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Adia bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, shall share her children and grandchildren in memory of her uncle, founding member of BRS, Dr. Israel Brook, Yisrael ben Arav Akiva. Marcia Federbush and family, in memory of her husband, Dr. Oriel Paul Federbush, Oriel Pinchas ben Arav Shimon. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Edelbas Yaakov. Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Siddell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan. Friends of Avi Gitler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gitler, Charna bas Yeshaya. Friends of Toby Peres, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov. Friends of Malka Levi, Malka bat Yosef. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim. Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine, in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Now, a month of learning by Mel and Haran Haller, in memory of his brother Yaakov ben Abraham. Jill and Perry Meltzer, in memory of his father, David ben Fishel Halevi, and her mother, Bela bas Abraham. Dov Bodlander, in memory of his wife, Udal bas Yehuda Tzvi. A month of learning also by Stephanie and Fred Mortman for the Refuah Shlema of her daughter Mazal bat Sarah Malka. A week of learning by Jack Gilman, in memory of his mother, Elka bat Yeshayahu. Also, we have the following. For Shabbos, we have Day of Learning by B. Worden, in memory of her friend Herschel ben Abraham. May the Shamas have an Aliyah, Yeshir Hashem Atzliah, and L'chol B'nai Yisrael, a good Geben Shtiyah.
Amen.
All right.
Amen.
Okay, we are on 82A. All right, and a reminder again that as of next week, Friday, we go to Gemara Sukkah, and we go both, hopefully in person and Zoom. Okay, Matnitin, says our Mishnah, Hatinakot, in terms of young children, Ein ma'aninotan b'yom haKippurim. We don't force them to be afflicted, I'm translating it, on Yom Kippur. Aval mechanchinotan lifnei shana, lifnei shnatayim. But we educate them either a year or 2 years before, b'shvil shehiyu regilin b'mitzvot, so that they will be accustomed to observing commandments. Now, Gemara is going to deal with a linguistic issue here. Why is it that the Mishnah has to say both 1 or 2 years? If you say 1 year, isn't that enough? Right? Welcome back, Erwin. Okay, right. So Gemara approaches that issue. Hashta b'fnei shtayim mechanchin laho. Here, okay, the wording of the Mishnah, as it says, at 2 years before we educate them. B'fnei shana mebaye. And therefore we ask, so why then, if it said 2 years, why then include the statement of 1 year?
Right.
What's the point? Amar Rav Chisda lo kasha. Ha bechole ha bari. It's no problem, says Rav Chisda. In one case, we're talking about a child who is weak or ill. In another case, a child who is healthy. Right? So the healthy child 2 years before, the weaker child 1 year before. Now Rav Huna, Amar Rav Huna, ben Shmona uben Tesha, mechanchin oto l'shaot. Okay, a 8-year-old or a 9-year-old, we educate them about fasting in terms of a number of hours. Ben Eser uben Achatasre, a 10 or 11-year-old, mashlimin midrabanan. We have them, I'm translating it, we have them complete the whole fast according to the rabbis. Ben Shtemasre, mashlimin b'nidoraita b'tinoket. And at 12 years old, we have a girl complete the fast according to the Torah. Now, Rav Nachman is going to give a slightly different statement. Rav Nachman Amar ben Tesha, ben Eser mechanchin otam l'shaot. A 9 or a 10-year-old, we have them fast for some hours. Ben Echatasre, ben Shtemasre, 11 or 12-year-old, mashlimin midrabanan. We have them complete the fast rabbinically. Ben Shalosh Esrei, mashlimin midoraita, betinok. And at 13 years old, the fast is completed for a boy, okay, from a Torah perspective. Now, a third statement. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Hashlama de Rabbanan leka. According to Rabbi Yochanan, there is no obligation for a boy, okay, or for a girl to complete the fast rabbinically. Ben Eser, ben Echatasre, 11 or 12-year-old, mechanchin oto l'shaot. We educate them fasting a number of hours. Ben Shtemasre, a 12-year-old, mashlimin midoraita. At 12 years old, we have them complete the fast from a Torah law. Now, let's see what happens as the Gemara continues and tries to clarify. Tnan, we learned elsewhere in another Mishnah, Hatinokot, ein ma'anin otam b'yom haKippurim. It was our Mishnah that taught that in regarding to children, we don't force them, cause them to afflict themselves on Yom Kippur. Aval mechanchin otan lifnei shana v'lifnei shtayim. But we educate them for a year or 2 years. Now, says the new Mishnah. Bishlama l'Rav Huna v'Rav Nachman. That seems appropriate, granted to Rav Huna and Rav Nachman. Lifnei shana v'lifnei shtayim. Before 1 year, before 2. Lifnei shana l'divreihem. Before 1 year for their words. In other words, according to Rabbanan. Lifnei shtayim l'divreihem. And according to 2 years, according to their words. Namely, according to that issue of Rabbanan. Ela, the Rabbi Yochanan, kasha. But this seems to be problematic, okay, to the view of Rabbi Yochanan, right? He said there is no law rabbinically to be mashlim the fast, okay? So what happens? Amar lecha Rabbi Yochanan, he would say to us, Mai shna o shana o shtayim. What do we mean by a year or 2? Samuch lepirkan. It means depending on when the child is close to puberty. Now, what does that imply? It says a braita, Tashma, Tatani Rabba Bar Shmuel, the following. Tinakot ein ma'aninotan biyom haKippurim. According to the braita, again, children are not forced to be afflicted on Yom Kippur. Aval mechanchinotan shana o shtayim. But we educate them a year or 2 before. Samuch lepirkan, close to their puberty. Bishlema l'Rabbi Yochanan. That seems appropriate according to the view of Rabbi Yochanan. Necha, that's fine. But, says the Gemara, Ela l'Rav Huna u'l'Rav Nachman, but according to their views, kasha, that's problematic. Amrei lach Rabbanan, these rabbis would say, Mai chinuch nami dikatane hashlama. What do we mean when we say educating them? What the Mishnah is trying to tell us is that we do have this concept of completing the fast rabbinically, and that's what we're referring to, that it's up to 1 or 2 years before the child shows signs of maturity. Okay? Now, so the Gemara asks a worthwhile question, Umikare lechinuch hashlama, and do we normally, would we call educating the child this requirement, even de Rabbanan, of
completing
the fast? Vahatanya, but isn't it taught elsewhere in another Braita? Eize chinuch, what do we mean when we say what is educating? Haya ragil le'echol b'shtei sha'ot. Let's say that the child was used to eating the second hour of the morning. Machilino tod l'shalosh. We wait and feed them in the third hour of the day. B'shalosh, if they were used to eating the third hour of the day. Machilino tod ba'arba. We feed them the fourth hour of the day. Amar Rava bar Ula, he says the following, Trei chenuche havu, that there were really 2 varieties of training. One, perhaps for smaller children, deferring their meals,
right?
Slightly longer than their normal hour, and the other of training older children, okay, to get them used to fasting, okay, the entire holiday. All right? Okay, so that completes that Mishnah, and we now go to a new Mishnah. Okay, the following, Ubara Shahericha. What happens regarding a woman who is pregnant and she smells food, right? She smells the odors and she feels that she needs to have something to eat. Machilinota ad shetashiv nafsha, says the Mishnah. Okay, that if she's overcome by some craving to eat, we feed her enough till she recovers. Okay, that's what the Mishnah says. Choleh, a woman who is a person who is ill, not just a woman. Machilinoto al pi biki'in. We feed him based on the, I'm going to say, advice, the direction of experts. V'im ein sham biki'in, and if there are no experts present, in other words, medical, right?
Or rabbinical?
What?
Or rabbinical or just medical?
Koren has in the translation the advice of medical experts. Okay, so you may want to look if Art Scroll has a different statement or not. Okay, the imein sham beki'in, and if there are no experts there, machilinoto al pi atzmo, we feed him based on his own instruction, ad shiomar dai, until he says sufficient, it's enough. Now, Gemara wants to explore this issue in more detail. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, we've learned in the following in a Braita, Ubara Shehericha, a pregnant woman who smells food and has this craving to eat, Bisar Kodesh, O Bisar Chazir, whether it is, let's say, consecrated meat, right? which we might, I don't know, we could maybe even call it kosher food, okay?
Right.
But clear consecrated meat or chazir, pig meat, okay? Certainly non-consecrated and non-kosher perhaps. What does the Gemara tell us? The Braita, tochavin la kush barota. We take I'm going to call it like a straw, a thin spindle, okay? And we dip it in the juice, okay, of the item, umanichin la alpiha, and we put it on her mouth. Im nityashva da'ata, if her craving is satisfied, if your mind is settled, mutav, well. Ve'im lav, and if not, ma'achilin ota rotev atzma. If that's the case, we actually feed her some of the juice, some of the gravy.
It's very strange. Where would she smell pork? Where would that even be a havamina for her?
Okay, well, a good question, Bob. The only answer that I can suggest is, remember, this could occur when she's in her home. Her house, okay, may be next to the house of a non-Jew in the same courtyard.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
So, or else there was a Chinese restaurant down the block.
Okay.
Well, it was New Year's Day and they went for Chinese food? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So what happens next? V'im nit yashva da'ata mutav. And if her mind is settled, great. V'im lav, and if not, ma'achilin ota shuman atzmo. Then we feed her some of the fat. Okay? Why? She'en lecha davar she'omed b'fnei pikuach nefesh chutz me'avodah zara v'gilui arayot u'shvichut damim. Okay? Why? Because we have nothing that stands in the way of saving a life, clearly, except these three main prohibitions. Idol worship, number one, Gilui Arayot, prohibited sexual relations, and number three, bloodshed. Now, the Gemara is going to continue and clarify. How do we know that these three items, okay, are the basis for this statement? Avodah Zarah Minalan, how do we know that? Idol worship. Tanya, because we have taught in the Braita. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, he says, Im ne'emar b'chol nafshecha, if it says with all your soul, right? Love God with all your soul. Lama ne'emar b'chol ma'odecha. Why then is it written with all your might? Ve'im ne'emar b'chol ma'odecha. And if it says with all your might, lama ne'emar b'chol nafshecha. Why is it said with all your soul? Right? Okay, and so we go continuing. Im yesh lecha adam shegufo chaviv alav memamono. If there's a person whose body is more important to him than his
doctor's office,
right, his property, right? L'kach ne'amar b'chol nafshecha. Therefore, it's written for your soul, all your soul. V'im yesh lecha adam shemamono chaviv alav migufo. And if there's a person whose property, okay, is more important than his life, l'chach ne'amar b'chol ma'odecha. Okay? Now, there's an interesting note I want to quickly share in Koran. I don't know if we would agree with it. Okay? He says one of the commentaries suggests a young person is able to work, so his body is dearer to him than his money. On the other hand, a weak, elderly, weak man will be left hungry and wanting if his money is taken from him. So his money is dearer to him than his body. That's according to Tosefet Yom HaKippurim. I'm not sure we would agree with that Perush, right? Okay, next was the question of Gilui Arayot, right? Gilui Arayot u'shfichut damim minalan. How do we know that these two items, okay, are so significant, right? Rabbi Omer, says Rabbi, Ki ka'asher yakum ish al re'ehu u'ritzacho nefesh, okay, kain hadavar hazeh, right? For as when a man rises against his fellow and slays him, even so is this the matter, right? V'chi ma inyan lamadnu mirotzeach l'na'ara ha'ma'orasa. And what is it then that we learn regarding one who kills somebody, right? How is that associated from the whole issue of a betrothed woman? Okay, namely the following. The halacha of the betrothed woman we're going to see is very clear. How does that educate us in terms of the halacha of the murderer? Elaharezia balelamed, answers the Gemara. Rather, this is what it comes to teach. V'nimtza lamed, and we find that we learn the following. Man na'ara ha'me'orasa nitan lahatzila benafsho. The same way that a one woman who is engaged, betrothed, okay, one has permission to save her bin nafsho by taking the life of the one about to commit the act of, let's say, rape.
Rape.
Okay. Af rotseach. So likewise regarding a murderer, namely, ma rotseach yehereg va'al ya'avor, af na'ara ha'ma'orasa yehereg va'al ya'avor. So the same way one can prevent the potential rapist, okay, from doing that act for a young betrothed woman, so likewise one may prevent a potential murderer, okay, from committing the act of murder.
Rabbi Green, what
Yes,
about a mother? What about a mother who submits to illicit relations to save her children? In other words, you're doing it to save someone else's life.
Excellent question, Zev. I'd have to give some thought to that. Don't have an immediate answer for you. Okay? Maybe, except just to suggest, maybe that would be considered a situation of onus. And maybe as a result of that, okay, there would be a different perspective. I'm not sure. But a good question. Okay. Right. Now we're going to pick up on Amud Beis, right? Short section today. V'rotzeach gufei min alam. So regarding the murderer himself, okay, how do we know that that's the case? Savarahi. It's logic. Dahahu da'ata lekame de Rava. As in a situation that one came before Rava, Amarle, and he said to him, Amarli Mari Durai, said, what happened the following was a real, apparently Shaila. One either was a real case or a theoretical case that was asked to Rava. Person came to him and said, Amare Durai, the master of the village, came to him. Ketale the palmaya, kill so-and-so, v'ilo katilna lach. And if not, I will kill you. Amarle, and Rava then answered him, Niktalach velo tikto. Basically, he said, let yourself be killed and do not kill another person. Mai chazet dedama didach sumak tfei. What is it that you would see that your blood is redder, right? Dilma dama dehahu gavra sumak tfei. Perhaps the blood of that man is redder. In other words, is it possible that he's more important than you? Okay. It's therefore logical that you must not kill another person to save yourself. Okay. And by the way, again, Koren has a note here that points out that this also applies to a sense of community. When a community, okay, and this, we have stories in the Gemara and elsewhere, when they would say, send out, somebody from the town, unless they specifically spelled out the person by name, okay? We have that, by the way, originally a story in book of Shmuel, okay? Shmuel Bet, I think. Okay, finishing up now, this Hahi Ubara Da'archa. Again, the pregnant woman who smells food. Atula Kame de Rabbi. This situation came before Rebbe. Amar lahu, and he said to them, Zilu lechushu la diyoma de Kippurehu. Whisper in her ear that today is Yom Kippur. In other words, not just the fact that it is a fast day, but the implication is that fasting is only really temporary, and that later on in the day, you'll be able to eat. L'chusha la ve'il chisha. If they whispered to her, right, and the whispering helped, right? Kari alei baterem et sorcha babeten yedaticha v'gomer. Okay? Then what happened? Rabbi Yehuda would cite the pasuk that says, before I formed you in your belly, I knew you. In other words, there would be something special about that child because the mother made that extra effort. And what happened? Nefak mina Rabbi Yochanan. From that woman produced a child who ultimately was Rabbi Yochanan. Now another situation. Hahi ubara v'da'archa. A different pregnant woman smelled food. Atula kame de Rabbi Chanina. They came before Rabbi Chanina. Amar lahu, and he said to them, Lechushu la, right? Whisper in her ear again. We assume that it is Yom Kippur. Velo ilchisha, but it did not satisfy her. Okay, it did not work out. Kari ale. Okay, and what did they then cite pasuk regarding that infant? Zoru Rishaim Mirechem. The wicked are estranged from the womb. Nefak Mina Shabtai Atzar Pere. And from her eventually came the child who was Shabtai, the one who would hoard all kinds of fruit, right? And therefore during a famine, he kept the price, that kept the price high, and as a result, many poor people suffered. Okay?
So what they're saying is that the fetus could be an apicorus, that she would not know this already?
I don't know if he's saying he's an apicorus, but he's certainly saying that he's not necessarily one who is appropriate behavior, okay, in terms of the well-being of the community. Okay, Gemara picks up then. We'll do a little bit of what would be tomorrow's Gemara, all right? Got a few more minutes. Next. Okay, let's see if it addresses that question, Marvin, that you asked. Right? Namely, our Mishnah said that in terms of someone being sick, we feed him based on the advice of experts. Right? Amar Rabbi Yanai, says Rabbi Yanai, the following. Chole omer sarich. Let's say the person says, I need to eat. V'rofe omer eino sarich. But the doctor says he does not need to eat. Shom'im lechole. We listen to the ill person. My tama. What's the reasoning? Lev yodea marat nafsho. That a person knows the bitterness of his soul. Namely, that the ill person knows the severity or feels the severity and his weakness. Okay? Pshita, doesn't that seem obvious? Mahu detema. What then are you trying to tell us? Rofe, kimle tfe, kamash malam. Namely, that may think that the doctor is the one who might be more certain with his experience and know more, but nevertheless, it comes to teach us that the ill person knows and feels their suffering more. Okay? All right. Again, Corin has some notes, as I'm sure Art School does.
This is a proof that experts were doctors? Is that because they used the
Well,
word
it reminds me of a statement elsewhere in the Gemara, which I don't know if it's this point here, but it does remind me of a statement, and we'll finish, I'll share it, okay? Right after we finish this little piece. Rofe omer tzarich, v'chole omer eino tzarich. If the doctor says he needs the food and the ill person says he doesn't need it, shom'im l'rofe. We listen to the doctor. My tama, what's the reasoning? Tunbahu denaket lech. Okay? Because we say that there's a chance that the ill person is confused. Maybe they have a temperature and they're not sure. Okay? Now, we're going to stop there at that point. Okay? Because then the Gemara goes on quite a bit. But it said to tell you the answer elsewhere in the Gemara. I don't remember the location, but it says a doctor that charges nothing is worth nothing. Okay, so something to think about there. All right, but hopefully, God willing, we won't need doctors. Okay, at least.
Amen.
All right. So everybody.
Maybe a PhD.
What?
Amen.
A PhD, maybe, but